Hi friends, today's all about how to create a tufted fabric on a salvaged footstool. It's an easy beginner's DIY. I don't claim to be an expert because this was my first time trying it. But if me and my sister can do this, believe me, you can do it. So just let me get set up and I'll be right back. Let's start. Here's the fun part. So here's the salvaged footstool we started with. My sister Andrea picked it up at our local restore for $3.99. It looks a little dated because of the fabric, but the base was in pretty good condition. Before I get into the how-to details, here's the two inspo pics Andrea sent me. She wanted the base to be white, but the top she wanted to be a yellow tufted velvet. She was very specific. You gotta love a girl who knows what she wants. So here's how we DIY'd it. And just a disclaimer, I am not an upholsterer. I know that some of my SI family over on the blog are real upholsterers. So if any of you watching this video have tips that you'd like to add, feel free to chime in the comments below because I am all ears and I'd love to learn as well. But I have to say, it turned out pretty darn good. So we started by covering the buttons with fabric. Andrea found these buttons on sale for 50% off and bought 2 packs. We didn't use a button cover kit because covering buttons with fabric is really easy to do. We started by cutting a piece of fabric the size of the button top and gluing it onto the top, and this gives a little extra added cushion and keeps the top fabric from sliding around. Then we cut a larger circle and slip stitched it about 1/4 inch around the button. Then we pull the thread to create a small parachute pouch to enclose the button in it. Once the button is fully covered in fabric, we just straight stitched it closed and double knotted it. We repeated that with the other 3 buttons until all 4 of our buttons was covered with our fabric. Once our buttons were all done and tucked away, we disassembled this footstool from the base by unscrewing the hinges and removing the old fabric and foam. Now it was time to cut the new foam. And I just have a quick tip about buying foam. Andrea actually found the first package of foam at Fabricland selling for $18. Then we went to our local foam store and found the exact same pieces selling for $1. What a difference. So if by chance you have one of these foam suppliers or foam shops in your area, I strongly suggest going and seeing what they have to offer rather than buying from a fabric store because it is so much more economical. So to cut the foam to the exact size, Andrea laid the top of the stool on the foam and traced a line with a Sharpie. Then using a bread knife, which is not the correct tool to use for this application, but it does work, she cut the foam to size. To round the edges, she used a pair of scissors just to cut off the sharp edges and create about a 45-degree angle. Now it was time to mark out our tufted button placement. And because she really liked the diamond shape in her inspo pic, that's exactly what we did. So using a Sharpie, we marked out where we wanted the buttonholes to be and drilled a hole into the MDF. Then we attached the foam to the MDF using this adhesive spray. Now that we had our foam attached to the base, we added the tufted buttonholes to the foam by using a long knitting needle. This was long enough to push through the drilled holes in the back of the MDF right through to the foam. And then we marked the holes with a Sharpie and then took a pair of scissors and cut an X through the Sharpie mark. This creates enough space within the foam for the buttons to sink into and create the actual tuft. After we created the holes within the foam, it was time to cut out the batting and the fabric. We centered the foam in the middle of the fabric and batting and made sure there was an excess of fabric. If this is your first time doing a tufted upholstery project, I strongly recommend buying a little bit of extra fabric so you have it on hand. That way, if there's a slip up of any sort, you have the extra fabric to work with. So you will need enough to cover the front and the sides and extra to attach to the back. As a safety measure, we cut out an extra 6 inches overlaying the back just in case we made a mistake. Probably a little bit of an overkill there, but it made us feel much better. Okay, now the fun part, attaching the buttons to create the tufting. And I will not lie, this took us 2 tries. The first time we used a regular needle instead of an upholstery needle, and it did not turn out at all. Andrea was trying to take that regular needle, which wasn't long enough, and use like drill bits to kind of push it in and knitting needles to push it in. So it was just wasting our time, and the whole project it turned out quite messy. So I would strongly recommend investing the few dollars in a long upholstery needle. It makes things so much easier. And you could pick up these upholstery needles off Amazon or your local, say, Fabricland or Joann's or whatever. They're usually anywhere between $7 and $10. Well worth the few dollars though, because it will save you so much time and make things so much easier. So we started by threading the upholstery needle with a heavy-duty string or thread. Make sure you get an upholstery quality thread for this, because if you don't want to use something that's going to break, it does have to be heavy-duty. Then we ran the needle and string through the eyelet of our button. We tied a double knot onto the back of the button, and then finding the center of the tufting hole on the right side of your fabric. So we just kind of felt around the fabric, and you're going to feel where you actually made that X within the fabric, because your finger gets divoted in there. So you're going to find the center of that tufting hole, again on the right side of the fabric. Then insert the needle dead center of the hole through the fabric. And then you're going to bring the needle and thread right through to the MDF drilled hole on the other side, as you see us doing here. You're going to pull it tight and taut, and then using a staple gun, we stapled the string in place 3 times using a zigzag pattern for strength. We cut off any of the excess string and thread, and there was our first tufting button done. We repeated the exact same process with the 3 other buttons until they were all in place. And here's a really important part. Once our 4 buttons were in place in our diamond pattern, we wanted to arrange the tufted pleats. So before we attached the fabric to the back, we made sure that we liked the looks of the tufted pleating. And Andrea went ahead and arranged the folds so they look visually pleasing for her. As a rule of thumb, she read online that it looks best when all the folds are facing the same direction. And I have to say, even though this was our first time doing it, once those pleats start coming together, it looks really professional and good. I was very impressed with how it was turning out. So to finish it off, we had to attach the fabric to the back. We started stapling the fabric where the pleats are. So where the tufted buttons were and where the pleats were, that's where we started attaching. And on our second time around, we found out that it's much easier if you don't pull it too tight. So you just want to pull it nice and snug, but you don't want to over pull the fabric. Otherwise, you lose the shape of the tufting on the front. So once we attached the fabric onto the back where the buttons were, then we started at the corners. And the corners, we just folded over like a little present, just to make sure that those corners were nice and clean and had corner pleats in them as well. Once the corners were done, we went ahead and did the rest of the sides using the upholstery gun, probably about every, I'd say 2 inches or so. Made sure the fabric was nice and taut and there was no wrinkles, but we did not pull it too tightly again. Once all the fabric was attached, we cut off the excess fabric and batting off the back. Andrea went ahead and painted the base in this crisp white cotton paint. And I have to say, it looks great against the yellow tufted top. Here's a cost breakdown for this tufted footstool makeover. $3.99 for this footstool at the Restore. $1 for the foam. $2.50 for the 4 buttons because they were 50% off. $4 for the piece of remnant fabric. Maybe $3 worth of paint and upholstery thread. And of course, we did end up buying the upholstery needle, which was $10. So the total cost of this project, I would say, came to $15. And then the $10 for the upholstery needle, $25 if you add that upholstery needle in. But of course, we'll be using that for other projects down the road, I'm sure. So let's take a look at the before. And here's the after. And I have to say, I am so pleased with the way this turned out. My sister is thrilled. And that makes the 2 tries well worthwhile. So I hope this has helped you if you've ever wanted to try doing a tufted upholstery project. I hope this has given you some inspiration and confidence to do so. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please leave a comment down below. Hit the like button if you've gotten any value. You can also find me on my socials and over at salvagedinspirations.com, where I have over 500 furniture painting tutorials teaching you how to make your furniture beautiful. Until next time, have a fabulous week, and I'll see you again soon. Bye, guys.